Hello, Mr. St. Clair. How are you?
Hey, buddy. If I were any better, Matt, I would be Mrs. Beasley, your little dog who has no idea what happened in that courthouse in New York City yesterday.
You know, Mrs. Beasley, let me explain, Jay. Mrs. Beasley's version of injustice is going outside to the bathroom and not getting a treat when she comes back inside. So, and I'm not even kidding. She has come to expect that there are snacks available after she goes potty outside. And every so often, as a way to try to remind Mrs. Beasley and Munson that they don't always get snacks, we don't give them snacks. And the look on her face, I saw it yesterday afternoon when Donald Trump walked out of the courtroom. I said, that's the way Mrs. Beasley looks when she doesn't get a treat after going to the bathroom.
That's funny. That's funny.
Well, Jay, you have, these many, many weeks that we've been discussing this, and I feel like, we kind of just put the needle back on the record and go over the same tune, but it does bear repeating considering the results of the trial yesterday. You have said for a long time that this is not really in your wheelhouse because your area of expertise is the law, and this is more your words about politics than it is about the law. And I would assume, I don't want to assume too much, but I believe that I know you well enough to think that yesterday's verdict kind of proves that theory out.
Well, I've been saying for quite some time, Matt, that this was the case that I thought was the least likely case for Trump to win outright. I always thought this was the most dangerous case for him. It's because of the venue. The jury been aired, the people that are going to be on the jury. And what I didn't know is just how one-sided the judge was going to be.
Right.
And so you put those two together, and this case was decided before the first day of court.
I've held off this topic of conversation intentionally until we had you on because, you're my friend for a long time, and you know me. I fly probably a little hotter than I should sometimes, and I'm cool on certain things when I maybe should be a little bit hotter. But yet the first feeling that I had when I found out this verdict, but based on the timing, the fact that it was, 13 hours, 12 hours into the deliberation process,
right.
I was sad. Because even with the bias of the jury, I thought that there would be one or two or three individuals that saw through the bias, that saw through all of the clutter and the clatter, and would see to the law and how important it is to uphold those basic premises of our judicial system. And I was just sad that there was not a person that was willing to stand up and offer that argument in court. Or in deliberation.
You just, I think, absolutely explained my same emotional response, man. Maybe we've been around each other too long. But the sadness is exactly the right word. I was not surprised, but I was disappointed. The word that I had planned to use to you of what my feeling was disappointed. But I think sad is a better word. Sad that you're right. Not at least not one person out of 12 said this is wrong. What's going on here? The movie 12 Angry Men.
I thought of that. I thought of that too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or To Kill a Mockingbird. Or that's fiction. Let's just take real life. This is kind of the flip side of the O.J. Simpson coin. Right? That jury was not going to convict O.J. Simpson regardless of what the evidence was. They just weren't going to do it. And it's jury nullification. And here's the exact opposite. This jury was going to convict Trump no matter what the evidence was. And that's just sad. And I think what adds to the sadness is, look, if it were just, a poor black guy in rural Alabama in 1930, that's awful. But then it's a different kind of awful when it's someone running for president of the United States.
Right.
then
Right.
it's not just a social injustice. It really, frankly, sort of tears at the fabric of our country, man. Well, I guess social injustices do also, but I'm sad. I'm embarrassed for our judicial system. It just is a real stain on that. But we'll see what the outcome is. I mean, Trump said it exactly right. The real verdict comes on November 5th. Because that's what this is all about. It's all about the election.
Well, and you've said for a long time, and you've said it so well, that, none of this would be happening were November 5th not happening, right? I mean, that
If he hadn't run for president, none of these cases would have been filed. No question about it.
So there are several people already reaching out, 615-737-9986. If you have a question about the legal matters surrounding the Trump case or a question about any legal matter, that's what Jay is here for on these FRI Jays, 615-737-9986. You can dial them up on the membersnutrition.com super text line. If you want to call in, you're welcome to do that, and we'll try to get that together as well. TB wants to know, ask Jay, if Trump is sentenced in July, what he thinks will be the outcome of that sentencing. In other words, I've asked the question, Jay, and I don't know if we have to dive into New York state law deeply to figure this out or not, but would the judge have the ability? I don't know that. I mean, I perish the thought that he would actually do this, but would the judge in that case, if he sentences him to jail, would he have the ability to remand him into custody at the time of sentencing?
Well, he could, but then he'll post a bond. I think there is close to a 0% chance that Trump will be incarcerated prior to the November election. But with this caveat, and seeing this is where this gets over into your area, man, unless he wants it.
Mm-hmm.
And he might want it. Politics is not my expertise. That's yours. But he might want it. But if he doesn't, and that's my prediction, that he'll just post a bond for appeal. And if that's denied, he'll immediately appeal that. And in my judgment, the appellate courts up there will say, no, you got to let him out on bond.
So just functionally, I want to go over this. I think I have a rudimentary understanding of it because I've been friends with you for 20 years. But this was in state court. Right. So the appeals would – I mean, there are a couple of levels of state court, the appellate process at this stage. So Trump and his team will obviously immediately appeal this to a higher court.
Right. Yes, sir.
And how – I mean – I asked you this question this morning, and you seem pretty confident. I think you're right that none of the appeals will be heard prior to the election. And I'm curious if Donald Trump, as a defendant, not as a presidential candidate, but as a defendant, says no. I demand a speedy trial. Time is of the essence here, and maybe you do include some factor involved in the election. I don't know how you would do that, Jay, but I mean. Would Trump, the defendant, have the ability to say, no, I'm guaranteed the right of a speedy trial by the Constitution of the United States of America, and I want that right now?
Well, he's had his trial, so that concept doesn't really apply on appeals. The idea is you can't arrest somebody and hold them in jail for 10 years and not try him.
Mm-hmm.
So he's had his trial, so it's really not a speedy trial.
So the Constitution doesn't say anything about a speedy appeal? Come on, Jay, help me out.
Man, I'm just reporting the law. I can't change it.
I knew. Hey, I told myself. I said earlier today, in anticipation of our conversation, somebody at work said, "I can't wait to hear Jay." I was like, "Yeah, today's one of these days that Jay's going to tell me stuff that makes me want to yell at him."
Yep. A lot of fond memories, and that's when I say, "Hey, Matt, I don't make the law. I'm just reporting it."
So
no, there's no constitutional principle at issue here, man. It's just kind of a lady justice, right, holding those scales.
Mm-hmm.
And he could request that his appeal be expedited. He could certainly make that request. but he's not guaranteed that it'll be granted, and frankly, I don't think it would be here. And so, no, I don't think that I don't think the appellate court will decide this case prior to the November election.
So, in your mind, would they look at the totality of if Trump's folks filed an appeal? I mean, I understand that the justice system works so slow. I was involved in it. I don't know if you've ever been involved in these types of cases, Jay, where the system works so slow and it's years and years and years of filing this brief and that brief. I mean, that's how you make a living. That's how you bought your house, Jay.
Say, you know what? You know the number one reason that's true, man?
Why is that?
Lawyers work by the hour.
And so years of filing this brief and that brief and arguing over this word and that word. So if Trump files an appeal,
Right.
do you believe that the appellate court, I mean, how does that work? Like the court receives that appeal? How does that work?
Yeah, no, that's right. He has absolute right to appeal, and they'll file a notice of appeal promptly, just with a single piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
They'll set a briefing schedule, and a few months down the road, they'll file legal briefs. It'll all be argued on paper. Well, I guess they also oral argument, but they don't retry the case.
Uh-huh.
Right? The case has been tried. The evidentiary record is sealed. I mean, it's you can't put any more evidence in at this point. So it's all just done with lawyers.
Would the judges at the appellate court level, in your opinion, take into consideration that they're dealing with a case that has to do with the leading presidential candidate for the 2024 election?
Well, I think the only time they should take that into consideration, frankly, is if a request is made to speed up the appeal. We want this appeal to be resolved as quickly as possible, and I'd just go ahead and say before November 5th. This is wrong. The voters should be entitled to decide whether this sticks or not. I would make that argument. And if the judges that are considering that motion absolutely should take that into consideration. That's the grounds for the motion.
Mm-hmm.
And now how they would decide that, I don't know. I will say this, that the main factors will be political, right? Because, I mean, the motion's based on politics.
Mm-hmm.
They railroaded me. The only reason I got railroaded is because I'm running for president. And the entire country deserves to know before that election whether this was really a valid conviction or not. That's absolutely what I would argue.
And it goes to the heart, and it's where the legal process and the political process meet, right? It goes to the heart of what we've been talking about, that none of this is about securing an ultimate conviction after all of the appeals have run out. It's all about the political conviction that they believe he will receive as a result of being able to call him a quote-unquote convicted felon.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The biggest question that I'm getting from the super text line, a number of different questions for you, Jay, regarding this case, but the biggest question I'm getting, and I'm sure you've thought about it, just knowing you, this idea of you have to agree on these 34 counts, but you don't really have to agree on the underlying stuff. This idea that he had to do it in order to conceal, commit, or cover up another crime, and then the judge in the case gave him like a list of things they could pick off of, and that's confused. I mean, that's legitimately confusing people, like how that can be. And I want to get your thoughts after the break about that, if we can.
Very good.
22 after the hour, Jay's with us. We are live at Twin Creeks Marina, beautiful Thames Ford Lake. I said that just right, in Winchester, Tennessee. We'll be back right after this on The Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It is Matt Murphy, Twin Creeks Marina, and the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We'd love to see you. Lots of folks spending some time out on the dock. I mean, the entirety of the restaurant, the Nest, whatever the Nest is, the events center, boat rental facility. I mean, it's all right here. The Drafts and Watercrafts restaurant and bar. We're on the water, baby, and we would love to see you. Thames Ford Lake at Twin Creeks Marina. Jay St. Clair is with us as well. Sadly, he is not here in lovely Jay, have you ever been to Winchester?
All over this. I went to a swimming meet in Tullahoma, and
a swimming meet. Wait a minute, hold on. A swimming meet in Tullahoma.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And Clarksville, and of course Chattanooga. And my dad's from Murfreesboro, and I, of course, am from the beautiful Sequatchie Valley,
Dunlap, Tennessee.
That's it.
I've been to the one red light in Dunlap. Actually, I take that back. They put up another one. I don't know if I told you that or not, but there was two. I saw a couple of them.
Was it on, or they turned off at 8 o'clock?
Well, it was flashing. It just one side flashes red and the other side flashes yellow. You know how it goes.
I know.
So I have a few other things to say about Tullahoma and Winchester, but I'm going to hold off on that because I want to get to this. I want to get to this answer before we get to the bottom of the hour, and a lot of other questions coming in for Jay St. Clair. 615-737-9986. So, It confused a lot of people, including yours truly, Jay, that the judge could. It did not seem like the prosecution brought up this connective crime at all.
Right.
And the judge brought it up in his charging statement to the jury as he charged the jury. And just walk me through what you heard and help us understand how that can be, that the judge, he gave the jury options in terms of what crime they believed that Donald Trump was attempting to cover up or commit as a result of this falsification of documents.
No, that's right. He was charged really with two crimes, each of which separately was a misdemeanor and is time barred. But somehow under New York law, if you put those two together, it converts to a felony. I got questions about all that, man. But yeah, so the claim was that they recorded something falsely on their books to hide another crime. And the false recording was a crime, but then they were hiding another crime. And they never really clearly said what that other crime was. And the judge says, well, y'all can kind of pick one. Y'all don't have to agree on the same crime. Here's three that they've talked about. But y'all all don't have to agree on that. I believe that is absolutely unconstitutional. The United States Supreme Court recently made it very clear, as clear as it can be, that jury verdicts in criminal cases must be unanimous. There's no doubt about that. And there was another case back in 1999 from the Supreme Court that kind of dealt with this issue. If there are predicate acts, if there's more than one act the person is charged with, then the jury has to be unanimous on what those multiple acts were. So, yes, I believe that part of the jury charge was defective. I believe that's one of the many grounds that they'll cite for reversing on appeal. And, frankly, I like the chance.
I think you just answered this super text, but I'm going to read it anyway, just in the interest of reading those texts that I think, agree with me and those that perhaps are of a different opinion. And I think this 5263 is coming from a different opinion on this. Says, read the jury instructions, Matt. They had to agree the falsification of business records was in the furtherance of a crime, but they didn't have to agree on what that crime was. Merchant didn't just, quote, give them a list of crimes to choose from. Those three predicate crimes the jury was allowed to consider and were introduced by the prosecution in the form of a motion that was prior to jury instructions. They wanted four. The judge denied one. The defense had their chance to counter the prosecution motion, but failed in their arguments. What do you say to that?
Well, they didn't fail. They lost. The judge says, no, I'm going to give an unconstitutional jury charge. The listener or the texter said it exactly right. The judge said, here are three possible predicate crimes. Y'all don't have to agree on that. You just have to find one of the three, and people can disagree on that, and you can still find them guilty. That is unconstitutional.
And you believe this will be one of the reasons that, or one of the appeals. I get one of the grounds. Grounds was the word I was looking for. One of the grounds for appeal. All right, 31 after the hour. More questions for Jay St. Clair. A lot of them coming in on the super text line. Jay is with us for the better part of the hour. It is FRI Jay, everyone, from Twin Creeks Marina in lovely Winchester, Tennessee. It's the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We're right outside of Drafts and Watercrafts, which is the lovely floating restaurant here at Twin Creeks Marina on Thames Ford Lake. Jay St. Clair, I asked you about Winchester, and I remembered the other question that I was going to ask you. Were you knowledgeable about the fact that it was Thames Ford Lake, which is very confusing to me? Did you have any? Do you have any knowledge of Thames Ford Lake?
Yes, I don't know the name derivation, but yeah, I'm familiar with that. Because when we lived in Huntsville, we would drive kind of up that way to go to Murfreesboro.
Uh-huh.
So I know I would go out through Shelbyville, and so I know that part of the God's country well.
Well, some knucklehead for the first hour of my appearance out here was calling it Tim Ford's Lake, and. And the same knucklehead, I have it on good authority, didn't understand why people, when they walked by him, were shaking their head like they were ashamed of him. But they were, but he eventually got it right. Here's an important question, Jay, and this is kind of a little bit in my wheelhouse, but a little bit in your wheelhouse, too. I think you'll know the answer to this question. Jake writes in and says, I thought a felon was not allowed to be president of the United States of America.
Well, that's incorrect.
That is incorrect. I think I'm right. I think this off the top of my head, but I think that there are 3 requirements
to be it's in the Constitution.
That's right. And it's
5 years old. You have to be a born or naturalized citizen of the United States. Oh, I remember the 3rd. You got to be a Tennessee fan.
No. You have to have lived in the United States of America for the last 14 years.
Oh, okay.
That is number 3. There's no constitutional. You know what? The University of Tennessee, I think I'm right in this, Jay. I don't think it comes up once in the Constitution of the United States.
Damn, blame.
This is a question that a number of folks have asked. 1215 says, can Trump circumvent the state appellate process and go straight to the Supreme Court since this involves a presidential election?
He can. Right? Bell's not with you, but Bell knows that it only takes 2 things to file a lawsuit. Well, those 2 things work here, man.
$400 and a crayon.
Where'd you get your law degree?
Same place you did, I think. No. I'm sorry, I didn't go to Harvard.
Well, you don't need to slander me like that.
I knew that would work.
Those are fighting words.
Bell, you've come closer to putting Jay's needle in the red than anybody I think I've ever heard.
I think you're right.
I think you almost got him in the red there.
Dang. So yes, they can file papers to go have a Supreme Court take this case directly. I do not believe they would do that, but he can try. And Mark Levine's been out there beating the drum about that. There is a vehicle by which he can do that, but they don't have to take it, and I don't think they will. They'll wait and let the lower appellate courts work through it first.
But, isn't that, and once again, the pendulum swings from the legal world to the political world and the legal world to the political world, right? And so the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and I think, well, if the Supreme Court says, no, we're going to let the process work out, aren't you giving the victory to the people whose entire point is to keep this around until after the election? Well, that's the whole point.
The key word in that question, Matt, the key word is victory.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Nah, well, you're right about that. And the response, I think, has been very, very different for those who intended to bring this up for the political purposes that we believe are involved. Because I don't think they expected the level of rallying around Trump that we have seen as a result of this verdict. Almost $40 million in 10 hours, Jay.
No, well, I agree with that. As we sit here today, or I say the game's not over, but the petard has exploded differently than the bomber's plan.
Yep, right about that. Tommy writes in and says, I have a question for Jay. What is the method to remove a judge, a corrupt judge, he said, from the bench? And more broadly, if we believe that this judge has just allowed the politics of the day to affect his decision making, I mean, what's the process by which a judge would have to go? A judicial canon of ethics, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's different state to state, and I'll confess to you, I've never looked at what this procedure is in New York. But, yes, I'm sure, like in Alabama, they have what's called the Court of the Judiciary, and each state has some means of disciplining judges, and so you just have to go through that process. But it's a New York state process. It's not a federal process or not a Tennessee process. So it's the state of New York gets to decide if they're going to remove a judge or not. Judges are elected. This judge was elected.
1833 says, Matt, please ask Jay how they got away without telling Trump the charges of the underlying commission of the crime. In other words, I guess they waited till right at the very end before they brought this into the trial, and I was confused all along as to how they could get away with not telling the defense what the secondary crime that he was being accused of committing or covering up was.
Yeah, here's how they got away with it. Is a judge in the middle of a trial is a dictator, man, an absolute dictator. He controls everything that happens in the courtroom, and there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to sit there and take your whipping. And he can be as wrong. I mean, there's a judge here. I've tried a lot of cases, but he would sustain objections that weren't even made. If a question was asked that he didn't like, he would just say, sustained, move on, counsel. And
what?
There's nothing you can do about it, man.
Wait, hold on. So, judge in a court, I'm not going to ask you who, because I know you wouldn't tell me anyway.
Well, he's not on the bench anymore. I'll tell you exactly who it was. A UW Clement, federal judge.
So, a federal
guy, I love him to death, but good Lord.
Wait, so he would just not like the question or have a preconceived notion in his head that he didn't like where it was going or whatever, and before opposing counsel would offer an objection, he would sustain it?
Right. He'd just say, sustained, move on, counselor. And there's nothing you can do about it, man. And listen, I've had him sit in the courtroom and use body language when charging a jury. Now, if you think that the defendant is guilty and he'd shake his head up and down, then this is what you do. But if you think the defendant is innocent, he'd shake his head back and forth, no. I watched it, man, in my trial. And there's nothing. Here's the only thing you can do about it. You can say, well, I want the record to reflect that, right, because it's not in the record. He's smart. He's doing it on purpose. There's no evidence of what he was doing. And so you have to stop and say, well, Your Honor, I want to put in the record that when you said if the defendant is guilty, you nodded your head up and down, meaning yes. Well, how do you think that's going to play out?
Right. I mean,
you just have to take your whipping.
I mean, and I thought about this earlier today when Trump came out and he talked about the rigged nature of the trial, and he said the Trump things, but he also went after the judge again, and just for a split second, Jay, I thought, man, Trump better watch it because this guy's got to sentence him coming up July 11th. But then I realized, well, I mean, he knows, and we all know that that's already baked in the cake.
Oh, yeah, he ain't going to change that. You don't have to worry about that.
What do you expect?
Apparently the maximum charge, I'm thinking about this, man. The maximum sentence for this crime apparently is 4 years.
Uh-huh.
Well, he's got 30-something convictions, right?
Right.
And he doesn't have to make those concurrent. You know what may be best for Trump? Is for this judge to sentence him to 120 years in prison. I mean, if you go big.
I mean, you may as well go ahead and do it. I mean, I think we all get it already. The absurdity of it is coming out. One thing that I'm happy to see, we talked about how sad it was that not one person on the jury. It's kind of the opposite of 12 Angry Men, and I would encourage for those listening that have never seen the play or seen the movie, more particularly with Henry Fonda as the lead in that movie, please go watch it because it's a great example of how the process ought to work and how. Yeah, go ahead.
If you don't have time to watch that, watch the Andy Griffith episode where Aunt B is on the jury and Jack Nicholson is the defendant. And everybody wants to convict him except Aunt B.
I don't know that I remember that episode, Jay. Now, you're
I think all about it. And Aunt B turned and she was the only woman on the jury.
Uh-huh.
She turned them around.
Oh, so they had their own version of 12 Angry Men on the Andy Griffith Show. I don't think I've ever seen this.
Wasn't that one of the color episodes?
And I think it is, yeah. And the defendant is played by Jack Nicholson.
Huh.
Look it up.
I'll have to go look that up. Jay, let me see if I got any more. Ask Jay. Here's a great question for you, Jay, considering some of your prognostications regarding the University of Tennessee in the past. Does Jay have a prediction on UT in the College World Series?
My crystal ball broke a long time ago, but here's the only prediction I will make. Somebody on the University of Tennessee will hit a home run in the College World Series. They're bombers. I know you probably don't follow them.
I don't.
But they got a guy who set the single season record for most home runs, and they're number one team in the country right now. So, but I think the odds are really against them. I don't think going into the College World Series, the number one team ranked going in hadn't won it in like 30 years. So my only prediction is somebody wearing an orange jersey is going to hit a dinger in Omaha.
I bet they will. This is a great place to end the conversation about Trump right now. This is a really good question. We have really, really smart listeners. And 6585 wants to ask you, Jay, what you believe, looking back on it, hindsight's 20/20, of course, but what could Trump have done, if anything, differently within the trial? What could his attorneys have done differently within the trial, looking back on it now?
To change the outcome of the case, I would say nothing. I don't think that I'm not going to run more quarterback anything they did in terms of winning the case. The part of this, here's the technical part that lawyers do, is protecting the record, making sure they objected to everything that could be grounds for appeal. I'm not privy to all that kind of detail. These are great lawyers, and I'm sure they adequately protected the record. So the answer to your question is nothing. I think this outcome is predetermined, and I don't think there's anything they could have done to change the outcome of this case.
A lot of go Vols for you, Jay, as folks want to offer their support for UT in the College World Series and beyond. And I do appreciate you. You know, we lean on you during these times when we're trying to figure out all of this legal stuff, and we appreciate you being on with us today, my friend. Hit them straight.
Thank you, man. You know, it's my pleasure. I love you and I love Middle Tennessee, and I love all your listeners. Thank you for letting me be part of the show.
It's absolutely our pleasure. There's Jay St. Clair spending a better part of an hour with us on Super Talk 99.7 WTN and the Matt Murphy Show.